Last week, a 42-year-old CEO sat in my office and broke down crying because she got a 98 on her daughter's school bake sale feedback form. Not a 100, a 98. And as she sobbed, she said something that stopped me cold. She said, "I can still hear my mother asking where the other 2 points went." This woman runs a multi-million-dollar company. She has 3 degrees. She's been in therapy for years. And yet, a missing 2 points on a bake sale form transported her right back to being 7 years old, standing in her kitchen, holding a math test, watching her mother's face fall because an A wasn't an A+. If you just felt something tighten in your chest, if you just remembered your own kitchen, your own test, your own mother's face, then what I'm about to share with you isn't just another psychological theory. It's the explanation for why you're exhausted, why success feels empty, why you can't stop, why enough is never enough, and why, no matter what you achieve, there's still a voice in your head saying you could have done better. That voice isn't yours. It never was. It's your mother's voice, perfectly preserved, playing on a loop that started decades ago and hasn't stopped since. And here's what nobody tells you about being raised by a perfectionist mother. She didn't just set high standards. She rewired your brain. She programmed your nervous system. She installed an operating system in your mind that turns every single moment of your life into a test you can fail. Every conversation becomes a performance review. Every relationship becomes a project to perfect. Every mirror becomes a courtroom where you're both the prosecutor and the defendant. Every achievement becomes a momentary relief before the next mountain appears. You're not living your life. You're still auditioning for your mother's approval. And the most heartbreaking part? She's not even the one judging you anymore. You've internalized her so completely that you do it to yourself. You've become your own perfectionist mother, and it's killing you. Not dramatically, not obviously, but slowly, quietly, one impossible standard at a time, one sleepless night at a time, one "I should have done better" at a time. The woman who cried over the 98, she hadn't taken a real vacation in 6 years. She worked through her own wedding. She answered emails during labor. She wore her exhaustion like a badge of honor, because somewhere, deep in her bones, she still believed that rest was for people who had earned it, and she hadn't earned it yet. She never would, because that's the first chain your perfectionist mother wrapped around you, so gently you didn't even notice. The achievement trap. The beautiful, horrible lie that says, if you just do enough, be enough, achieve enough, you'll finally feel enough. But here's what I've learned after 20 years of working with daughters of perfectionist mothers. That feeling of enough you're chasing, it doesn't exist at the end of achievements. Your mother was chasing it too. Her mother probably chased it before her. It's a generational ghost, passed down like an heirloom nobody actually wants, but everyone's too afraid to throw away. The achievement trap isn't just about doing well. It's about the panic that comes when you're not actively achieving something. It's the anxiety that floods your system on Sunday afternoons when you have nothing to produce. It's the way relaxation feels like failure. It's how you've turned your entire life into a resume for a job interview that never ends. Think about it. When was the last time you completed something and just stopped? Just sat with it? Just felt proud without immediately thinking about what's next? You can't remember, can you? Because in your mother's house, there was no finish line. Every achievement was just a launching pad for the next expectation. Every success came with a "but" attached. You got straight A's, but your room is messy. You made the team, but you're not the captain. You got the promotion, But what about the next one? And so you learned that achievements weren't destinations. They were temporary shelters from disappointment. They were ways to buy yourself a few moments of safety before the next wave of not enough crashed over you. This is why you're tired. This is why success feels hollow. This is why you can't stop. Because stopping means confronting the truth that no amount of achievement will ever fill the hole where your mother's unconditional love should have been. But the achievement trap is just the beginning. It's the visible part of something much deeper, much more insidious. Because while you were learning to chase achievements, something else was happening in your mind. Something that would follow you everywhere, into every room, every relationship, every quiet moment of your life. You were developing a voice. Not your voice, her voice. Except now it sounds like you. I call it the inner critic on steroids. And if you were raised by a perfectionist mother, yours isn't just critical. It's prophetic. It's omniscient. It's relentless. And it's so sophisticated that you probably think it's protecting you. Let me show you what I mean. Before you send an email, there's a voice that reads it 17 times, looking for mistakes, for ways it could be misinterpreted, for any sign of imperfection. Before you speak in a meeting, there's a voice that's already played out 15 scenarios of how you'll sound stupid. Before you post a photo, before you make a phone call, before you walk into a room, that voice has already done a full reconnaissance mission, identifying every possible way you could fail, disappoint, or be judged. You call it being prepared. I call it living in a psychological prison where you're both the guard and the prisoner. This voice doesn't just criticize what you've done. It criticizes what you're thinking about doing. It criticizes what you might do. It criticizes you for things that haven't even happened yet. It's like having a mother who can time travel, showing up to disapprove of your future mistakes before you even make them. And here's the truly twisted part. You've gotten so used to this voice that silence feels dangerous. When the criticism stops, you get nervous. You actually go looking for things to criticize about yourself because the absence of that voice feels like the calm before a storm. One of my clients, a surgeon, told me she keeps a running list in her head of everything she's done wrong that day. Not because anyone asked her to, not because it helps her improve, but because if she criticizes herself first, thoroughly, brutally, maybe it won't hurt as much when someone else does it. She's performing her own emotional autopsy every single day, dissecting herself before anyone else can cut her open. That's not self-awareness. That's self-abuse. And it started when you were young, didn't it? When your mother would look at your art project, and her eyes would go straight to the crooked line. When she'd read your essay and circle the mistakes before mentioning what was good. When she'd watch you play and see only what needed improvement. You learned that love meant being seen through a lens of deficiency. You learned that the way to avoid bigger criticism was to offer up smaller criticisms yourself. You learned to throw yourself under the bus before anyone else could push you. So now you do it automatically. You walk into a room and apologize for being late when you're on time. You present your work with a disclaimer about everything that's wrong with it. You compliment others by putting yourself down. You've turned self-deprecation into an art form, thinking it makes you humble, relatable, safe. But what it really does is train everyone around you to see you the way your mother did, through a lens of deficiency, always improving, never arriving, always becoming, never being. The voice is so sophisticated now that it doesn't even sound harsh anymore. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like wisdom. It says things like, I'm just being realistic. I'm holding myself to high standards. I'm pushing myself to grow. But growth and punishment are not the same thing. Standards and cruelty are not the same thing. And that voice that you think is making you better, it's actually making you smaller. Because here's what that voice never tells you. It never tells you when you've done enough. It never tells you when to rest. It never tells you that you're allowed to be human. It never tells you that mistakes are not moral failures. It never tells you that you're worthy of love exactly as you are, right now, without changing a single thing. Your mother's voice couldn't tell you those things because her mother's voice couldn't tell her. And that's the tragedy of the inner critic on steroids. It's not even originally yours. It's an inherited curse, passed down through generations of women who were taught that love was something you earned through perfection, not something you deserved through existence. The surgeon I mentioned, she called me last month. She'd made a minor error in a surgery. Nothing dangerous, nothing that affected the outcome, just a small imperfection in her technique that nobody else even noticed. She didn't sleep for 3 days, not because anyone criticized her, not because there were any consequences, but because the voice in her head turned that minor imperfection into evidence of her complete inadequacy as a surgeon, as a professional, as a person worthy of taking up space in the operating room. That voice took a moment and turned it into an identity. It took a mistake and turned it into a prophecy. It took a human error and turned it into proof that she was exactly what she'd always feared she was. Not enough. And that's what the inner critic on steroids does. It doesn't just comment on your actions. It makes verdicts about your worth. It doesn't just point out mistakes. It uses them as evidence in a case it's been building against you since you were old enough to disappoint your mother. The case that says you're fundamentally flawed. The case that says you need constant correction. The case that says left to your own devices, without this critical voice keeping you in check, you'd be exposed for what you really are. Which is what, exactly? You don't even know anymore, do you? Because you've been looking at yourself through your mother's critical eyes for so long that you've never actually seen yourself at all. And this blindness to your true self doesn't just affect how you see yourself. It fundamentally shapes who you choose to love and how you let yourself be loved. Which brings me to the third chain your perfectionist mother wrapped around you, one that might be the cruelest of all, the relationship saboteur. Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone loved you and you just let them? Without earning it, without deserving it, without improving yourself to be worthy of it, without immediately thinking of 17 reasons why they must be mistaken, desperate, or lying. You can't remember, can you? Because somewhere along the way, you learned that love is a transaction, and you've been keeping the books ever since. In your mother's house, love had conditions. Terms and conditions, actually. Fine print, clauses. Love came with performance reviews and improvement plans. Love was dispensed when you met expectations and withheld when you didn't. Love was a reward, not a right. So now, decades later, when someone says, I love you, your brain automatically translates it to, I love you, for now. I love you, but I love you. Until you mess up, and then you do something remarkable. You go looking for the catch, you test the love, you push boundaries to see when it will break. You create situations where the other person has to prove their love over and over again. You become the prosecuting attorney in your own relationship, building a case for why this person shouldn't love you, couldn't possibly love you, must be making a mistake in loving you. Or you do the opposite. You become the perfect partner. You anticipate needs before they're expressed. You fix problems before they're mentioned. You become a mind reader, a shapeshifter, a one-person relationship repair service. You love the way you learn to be loved, through performance, through achievement, through exhausting, relentless effort. Either way, you're not actually in a relationship. You're in a transaction. A woman once told me she kept a mental spreadsheet of everything she did for her partner. Not because she wanted credit, but because she needed to make sure she was always giving more than she was receiving. That way, she reasoned, he couldn't leave. She'd be too valuable to lose. She'd been with him for 7 years, and she was exhausted. Not from the relationship, from the performance of earning her right to be in it. She couldn't just be loved. She had to be indispensable. She couldn't just be chosen. She had to be earned. She couldn't just be herself. She had to be perfect. And here's what breaks my heart. The kind of person who's attracted to someone who needs to earn love, usually someone who needs you to earn it, someone who confirms your deepest fear, that you're not lovable as you are, someone who makes you work for affection the way you always have. You choose partners who feel like home, and home felt like proof. Proof that you were good enough, proof that you were trying hard enough, proof that you were improving fast enough. So you find yourself in relationships that feel exactly like your relationship with your mother. Constantly auditioning, constantly improving, constantly afraid that if you stop performing, the love will stop too. But here's the thing about being a relationship saboteur. You don't just sabotage bad relationships, you sabotage the good ones too, especially the good ones. Because when someone loves you easily, freely, generously, without conditions, without improvements needed, without performance reviews, your nervous system doesn't recognize it as love. It recognizes it as a trick, a trap, a lie. Your body literally doesn't know what to do with unconditional love because it's never felt it before. So you reject it. You run from it. You find reasons why that person is wrong for you. Too boring, too available, too easy, too nice. You tell yourself there's no spark, no chemistry, no challenge. But what you're really saying is there's no familiar pain. There's no struggle that feels like love. There's no difficulty that feels like home. I worked with a woman who ended a relationship with a man who adored her, who saw her, who accepted her completely, flaws and all. She left him for someone who made her feel like she needed to lose 10 pounds, be funnier, dress better, try harder. When I asked her why, she said the first man's love didn't feel real. What she meant was, it didn't feel familiar. It didn't feel like her mother's love. It didn't hurt the right way. This is the tragic irony of the relationship saboteur. You're so busy trying to earn love that you can't receive it when it's freely given. You're so focused on becoming worthy of love that you miss the people who already think you are. You're performing for an audience of one, your mother, who isn't even watching anymore. But you can't stop the show, because stopping would mean believing something your nervous system cannot accept. That you could be loved without earning it. That you could be chosen without competing for it. That you could be held without having to hold everything together. That you could be seen, really seen. All of you, the messy parts, the imperfect parts, the parts your mother criticized, and still be wanted. The thought terrifies you, doesn't it? Because if someone could love you without you earning it, then all that earning you did as a child was unnecessary. All that performing, all that perfecting, all that exhausting effort To be good enough for your mother's love wasn't required. You could have just been loved, the way children are supposed to be loved, the way you deserved to be loved, the way you still deserve to be loved. But first, you have to stop sabotaging the people who are trying to love you that way. You have to stop pushing away the love that comes easy. You have to stop choosing partners who confirm your worst beliefs about yourself. You have to stop recreating your childhood in every relationship, hoping this time you'll get it right. This time you'll be enough. This time you'll earn the love that was always supposed to be free. But there's something else that stops you from receiving love, something even more fundamental than your relationship patterns. It's the fourth chain, and it might be the one that's costing you the most: the emotion phobia. When was the last time you cried? I mean, really cried. Not the silent tears you quickly wipe away, not the controlled release you allow yourself in the shower, but the kind of crying where your body shakes, where sounds come out you didn't know you could make, where you let yourself fall apart completely. You can't remember, can you? Or maybe you can remember, and the memory fills you with shame. Because in your mother's house, emotions were inconveniences. They were failures of control. They were signs of weakness. They were things that needed to be fixed, managed, overcome. Your sadness was met with, "Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about." Your anger was met with, "Nice girls don't get angry." Your fear was met with, "Don't be so sensitive." Your joy was met with, "Don't get too excited." Every emotion came with a correction. Every feeling came with a judgment. Every expression of your inner world was met with evidence that your inner world was wrong. So you learned to perform emotional constipation as a life skill. You learned to swallow feelings before they could embarrass you. You learned to numb yourself before you could feel too much. You learned that the only acceptable emotion was no emotion at all. A CEO once told me she hadn't cried in 15 years. She said it with pride, like it was an achievement. She'd been through a divorce, her father's death, a cancer scare, and she hadn't shed a tear. She thought this made her strong. Then her body started having panic attacks, not during the day when she could control them, but at 3 a.m. when her guard was down, when her body could finally release what her mind wouldn't let her feel. She'd wake up gasping, heart racing, convinced she was dying. She was, in a way. The parts of her that needed to feel were dying from suffocation. Because here's what your perfectionist mother never told you. Emotions aren't the enemy of perfection. Numbness is. When you can't feel your pain, you also can't feel your joy. When you can't access your sadness, you can't access your creativity. When you can't express your anger, you can't establish boundaries. You become a beautifully functioning robot, productive, efficient, reliable, dead inside. The emotion phobia doesn't just steal your feelings. It steals your humanity. It turns you into exactly what your mother wanted. Someone who never makes her uncomfortable with messy emotions. Someone who never embarrasses her with authentic expressions. Someone who performs happiness whether they feel it or not. But bodies keep score. Every unfelt feeling gets stored somewhere. In your shoulders that are constantly tense. In your jaw that's always clenched. In your stomach that's never quite right. In your head that always aches. In your chest that feels tight for no reason. Your body is holding all the emotions your mother taught you were unacceptable, and it's exhausted from the effort. One of my clients discovered this in the most unexpected way. She went to get a massage, just a regular massage for her back pain. When the therapist touched a spot between her shoulder blades, she started sobbing. Not crying, sobbing. 20 years of tears came out on that massage table. The therapist, bless her, just kept working and said, "That spot holds a lot of grief." 20 years of grief from trying to be perfect enough for a mother who was afraid of feelings. 20 years of grief from never being allowed to be sad about being unseen. 20 years of grief from having to be okay when nothing was okay. This is what emotion phobia does. It doesn't eliminate feelings. It buries them alive. And they stay there, in your body, waiting. Waiting for a moment when you feel safe enough to feel them. Waiting for permission that never comes. Waiting to be acknowledged, validated, released. But you can't give that permission, can you? Because feeling would mean losing control. Feeling would mean admitting you're not perfect. Feeling would mean becoming everything your mother taught you not to be. Messy, unpredictable, human. So instead, you mistake numbness for strength. You call emotional shutdown being rational. You pride yourself on handling everything without falling apart, not realizing that falling apart is sometimes the only way to put yourself back together correctly. You've become so good at not feeling that you've forgotten how to feel. And now, when someone asks you how you are, you automatically say, "Fine," because you honestly don't know. You've lost touch with your inner landscape. You've become a stranger to your own emotional truth. This affects everything. It affects your relationships because you can't connect deeply when you're emotionally unavailable to yourself. It affects your decisions because you can't trust your gut when you can't feel your gut. It affects your creativity because creativity comes from the same place as emotions. The messy, uncontrolled, imperfect part of you that your mother taught you to hide. It affects your health because your body is screaming the emotions your mouth won't speak. A woman came to me with chronic pain. She'd seen dozens of doctors. Nothing was physically wrong. When we started talking about her childhood, about her perfectionist mother, about all the feelings she'd never been allowed to feel, she said something that haunted me. She said, "I think my body is having the breakdown my mind won't allow." She was right. Her body was feeling everything she wouldn't let herself feel. Her body was expressing everything she wouldn't let herself express. Her body was being human because she wouldn't let herself be human. The emotion phobia your mother gave you isn't protecting you. It's killing you slowly, one unfelt feeling at a time. It's turning you into exactly what she was, someone so afraid of feelings that they can't fully live. Because life without feelings isn't life. It's existence. It's survival. It's a performance of being alive without actually living. And this performance extends to every aspect of your life, including how you measure your worth against others. Which brings me to the fifth chain, the one that turns every human interaction into a competition you're destined to lose. The comparison prison. Right now, as you're listening to this, part of your brain is calculating how you measure up, calculating whether your pain is valid compared to others, calculating whether your success is enough compared to what you see around you. You're not even aware you're doing it. It's as automatic as breathing. Someone mentions their child got into Harvard, and your stomach drops because yours didn't. Someone loses weight, and suddenly you feel heavier. Someone gets promoted, and your own job feels like failure. Someone's house is cleaner, their marriage looks happier, their skin looks better, their life looks easier, and every single comparison feels like evidence of your inadequacy. You're living your life as a perpetual contestant, in a competition where everyone else seems to know the rules except you, where everyone else seems to be winning except you, where everyone else seems to have figured out the secret except you. But here's what's actually happening. You're comparing your insides to everyone else's outsides. You're comparing your blooper reel to everyone else's highlight reel. You're comparing your reality to everyone else's performance. Because just like you, they're performing too. Your perfectionist mother installed this comparison software in your brain before you even knew what was happening. She did it every time she said, "Why can't you be more like?" She did it when she pointed out how well other people's children were doing. She did it when she used shame as a motivational tool, making you feel small, so you'd try to be bigger. She taught you that your worth was relative, not inherent, that you were only as good as you were better than someone else, that being yourself wasn't enough unless yourself was superior to everyone else's self. A therapist friend of mine calls this competitive suffering. It's when even your pain has to win. You can't just be struggling. You have to be struggling more than others to justify feeling bad. You can't just be successful. You have to be more successful than others to justify feeling good. You've turned existence into an exhausting race where the finish line keeps moving. Social media has weaponized this tendency. Every scroll is a fresh opportunity for comparison. Every post is potential evidence that you're falling behind. Every story is a reminder of what you're not doing, not achieving, not being. I had a client who would spend hours on Instagram, methodically going through other people's lives, taking notes, actual notes, on all the ways they were doing better than her. Better vacations, better bodies, better careers, better children, better everything. She called it research. I called it self-torture. She was using other people's curated performances as evidence against herself in the case she was building about her own inadequacy. But here's the sick twist. Even when you win the comparison game, you lose. Because when you're doing better than others, you feel guilty. You minimize your success. You downplay your achievements. You hide your joy because your mother taught you that standing out was dangerous, that being better meant others would resent you, that success came with attacks of loneliness. So you can't win and you can't win. Either you're not enough or you're too much. Either you're failing or you're making others feel like failures. Either you're behind or you're leaving others behind. The comparison prison has no exit. A woman once told me she couldn't enjoy her promotion because her sister didn't get one. She couldn't celebrate her marriage because her friend was going through a divorce. She couldn't share her pregnancy joy because her colleague was struggling with infertility. She was living her life in constant calculation, measuring her right to feel anything against everyone else's circumstances. That's not empathy. That's emotional imprisonment. Your perfectionist mother created this prison when she made you responsible for her emotions, when your success made her feel better about herself, when your failure made her feel worse, when your achievements were about her reputation, not your growth. You learned that everything you did affected how others felt, and therefore you were responsible for managing not just your own emotions, but everyone else's too. Now you're an adult who can't just succeed. You have to succeed without making anyone uncomfortable. You can't just fail. You have to fail without burdening anyone. You can't just be. You have to be in perfect calibration with everyone around you. The comparison prison doesn't just steal your joy, it steals your authenticity, because you're so busy monitoring where you stand relative to others that you've forgotten to ask where you want to stand for yourself. You're so busy checking if you measure up that you've never asked what you're measuring against. You're so busy competing that you've forgotten you're allowed to just exist. Without ranking, without rating, without constantly calculating your worth against some invisible standard that changes depending on who's in the room. One of the most successful women I know, a surgeon who literally saves lives, told me she felt like a failure because she saw a mom at school who had handmade Halloween costumes for all 4 of her kids while she had ordered hers from Amazon. This brilliant woman, who had spent 12 hours in surgery the day before, was measuring her worth as a mother against someone else's Pinterest-perfect performance. She couldn't see that both mothers loved their children. She couldn't see that there are 1,000 ways to be a good mother. She couldn't see that comparison was stealing her ability to appreciate her own unique way of showing love. All she could see was evidence that she wasn't enough. Because that's what the comparison prison does. It takes every difference and turns it into a deficiency. It takes every variation and turns it into a failure. It takes the beautiful diversity of human experience and turns it into a hierarchy, where you're always finding yourself lacking. Your mother taught you to see life this way because she saw life this way. She was in her own comparison prison, measuring herself against other mothers, other women, other lives she imagined were better than hers. She passed that prison onto you, bar by bar, comparison by comparison, until you built your own cage so perfectly that you don't even see the bars anymore. You think this is just how life is. You think everyone is constantly measuring and being measured. You think your worth is a variable that changes based on your relative position to others, but it's not. Your worth is a constant. It was established the moment you were born. It doesn't increase when you achieve more than others. It doesn't decrease when others achieve more than you. You are not in competition with anyone for your right to exist, to take up space, to be imperfect, to be human. The competition only exists in the prison your mother built, and the door has been open all along, but you can't walk through it, can you? Because there's something holding you back, something that feels like protection but is actually another form of prison. The 6th chain, the one that makes you everyone's emotional servant while your own needs go unmet. The boundary allergy. Let me guess. The word no makes your throat close up. Setting a limit makes your heart race. Asking for what you need makes you feel selfish. Protecting your time, energy, or emotional space feels like abandoning others. You're allergic to boundaries, and this allergy is killing you one yes at a time. You say yes when you mean no. You say it's fine when it's not. You say you don't mind when you do. You say you're happy to help when you're drowning. You've become a human doormat with a smile painted on it, and you call it being nice. But it's not nice. It's a trauma response. Your perfectionist mother taught you that boundaries were acts of aggression. When you said no to her, it wasn't received as a boundary. It was received as a betrayal. When you expressed a need that conflicted with hers, it wasn't heard as communication. It was heard as selfishness. She trained you to believe that love meant having no boundaries, that good daughters don't say no, that your worth came from your usefulness, that your value was in your availability. So now you're everyone's unpaid therapist, everyone's emergency contact, everyone's emotional dumping ground, everyone's solution to problems they should solve themselves. A woman told me she answers work emails at her father's funeral because she didn't want to let anyone down. She was standing next to her father's casket, typing on her phone because saying, "I'm at a funeral," felt too selfish. That's not dedication. That's self-abandonment. Another client drove 2 hours each way every weekend to clean her adult brother's apartment because he couldn't handle doing it himself. She had 2 jobs, 3 kids, and chronic fatigue. But saying no to him felt like saying she didn't love him. She was literally killing herself to prove she cared. This is what the boundary allergy does. It turns you into a martyr who resents the very people you're sacrificing for. Because here's the thing nobody talks about. Every yes you give when you mean no builds resentment. Every boundary you don't set creates anger. Every need you don't express becomes bitterness. You're not actually being kind. You're being dishonest. You're lying about what you can give, what you want to give, what you have to give. And then you're angry at others for taking what you offered, but they're not mind readers. They can't see the no behind your yes. They can't hear the scream behind your smile. They can't feel the exhaustion behind your happy to help. They're just taking what you're giving, not knowing you're giving from an empty well. Your perfectionist mother created this allergy by making you responsible for her emotional state. When she was unhappy, it was your job to fix it. When she was disappointed, it was your failure. When she had needs, yours disappeared. You learned that the price of being loved was having no needs of your own. You learned that boundaries meant abandonment. You learned that saying no meant being a bad person. So now you're 40 years old, exhausted, resentful, and you don't even know what you actually want because you've spent so long focusing on what everyone else needs. You've become so good at reading other people's needs that you've forgotten how to read your own. You know exactly how everyone around you is feeling. But you couldn't tell me what you need if your life depended on it. And in a way, it does. Because boundaries aren't mean. They're life-saving. Boundaries aren't aggressive. They're honest. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're self-preservation. But your body doesn't know this. Your body still reacts to boundary setting like it's under attack. Your nervous system still treats no like a 4-letter word. Your muscle memory still tenses up when you try to protect your own space. A client once practiced saying no in the mirror for a week before she could say it to an actual person. Just the word, alone in her bathroom, made her sick to her stomach. That's how deeply her mother had programmed her to never refuse, never protect, never choose herself. When she finally said no to a request to work on her day off, she threw up afterward. Her body was having a physical reaction to breaking a rule that had been written into her cells. This is the power of the boundary allergy. It's not just psychological, it's physiological. Your entire system has been wired to prioritize others' comfort over your own survival. You've been programmed to be a human sacrifice. And the most heartbreaking part? The people who benefit from your lack of boundaries often don't even appreciate it. They've come to expect it. Your availability has become an entitlement. Your sacrifice has become an assumption. They don't see the cost because you've hidden it so well. They don't value what you give because you've made it seem so easy. They don't respect your needs because you've never shown them you have any. You've trained the world to treat you exactly the way your mother did, as someone whose needs don't matter, as someone whose time isn't valuable, as someone whose energy is unlimited, as someone whose purpose is to serve. But here's what your mother never told you, because she didn't know it herself. People who truly love you want you to have boundaries. They want you to say no when you need to. They want you to protect your energy. They want you to choose yourself. They don't want a martyr. They want a person. They don't want your sacrifice. They want your authenticity. They don't want you to disappear so they can exist. They want you both to exist fully. with needs and boundaries, and the beautiful messiness of being human. The boundary allergy your mother gave you isn't protecting your relationships. It's poisoning them. It's creating connections based on dishonesty, resentment, and the slow erosion of yourself. Real love doesn't require you to dissolve. Real connection doesn't demand you disappear. Real relationships have boundaries, and those boundaries don't separate people. They make real intimacy possible. But there's one more chain, perhaps the heaviest of all. The one that keeps you small even when you've earned the right to stand tall. The seventh and final chain, the imposter syndrome headquarters. Right now, as you listen to this, there's a voice in your head saying, they're going to find out. Find out that you don't really know what you're doing, that you've been faking it, that you got lucky, that you're not as smart, capable, or talented as everyone thinks. You're waiting for the knock on the door, the email that says there's been a mistake, the moment when everyone realizes you're a fraud. It doesn't matter that you have the degrees. It doesn't matter that you have the experience. It doesn't matter that you have the track record. Inside, you're still that little girl whose mother's eyes were always looking for what was wrong. And now, those eyes are your eyes. And they're looking at your life, your achievements, your success, and seeing only the gaps, the luck, the places where you don't measure up to some impossible standard. A partner at a law firm, 20 years of experience, told me she still feels like she's about to be exposed as incompetent. Every case she wins was luck. Every case she loses is proof she shouldn't be there. She's won more cases than anyone in her firm's history. She still introduces herself as just a lawyer. That's not humility. That's imposter syndrome headquarters, built by a mother who made sure you never felt quite good enough to stop trying harder. Your perfectionist mother planted this headquarters in your mind through 1,000 small moments. The A+ that should have been perfect. The compliment followed by but. The achievement that was expected, not celebrated. The success that was never quite successful enough. She taught you that no matter what you achieved, it wasn't really yours. It was luck. It was timing. It was other people being nice. It was anything except you being genuinely capable. So now you over-prepare for everything because you're terrified of being revealed. You have 3 backup plans for your backup plans. You arrive an hour early and review your notes 50 times. You apologize for your expertise while demonstrating it. You minimize your role in your own success. You're the CEO who says she just got lucky. You're the doctor who says she just studied hard. You're the artist who says she just dabbles. You're the mother who says she's just trying her best. Just. That word is the anthem of imposter syndrome headquarters. It shrinks everything you are into something dismissible. It takes your achievements and makes them accidents. It takes your competence and makes it questionable. But here's what I need you to understand. Real imposters don't have imposter syndrome. Real frauds don't lose sleep worrying they're frauds. Real incompetent people don't spend hours making sure they're competent. The very fact that you're worried about being an imposter is proof that you're not one. It's proof that you care about doing things right. It's proof that you have standards. It's proof that you're the exact opposite of what you fear you are. Your imposter syndrome isn't evidence of your inadequacy. It's evidence of your perfectionist mother's voice still echoing in your head, still telling you that you haven't done enough to deserve what you have. But you have. You've done more than enough. You've been enough all along. The headquarters your mother built in your mind has been lying to you. and it's time to shut it down.